Okay, welcome everybody who's here and everybody who's watching later to the first meeting of the Disabled and Non-Disabled Alliance at Sacramento State of fall 2021. We are happy to have you all here, and we are hoping to have more of you here at a later time, because this is kind of a big project we're taking on, being a disabled club at Sacramento State. So without too much further ado, this is the presentation you should be seeing. And it is basically going to be an overview of who we are, what we're planning to do with this semester, this year, and some open discussion about like what you think we ought to be doing. That's the main goal. First, we're going to, that's that. First, little bits and pieces about the officers. My name is William Wyatt, he, him. I'm the president very recently. And yeah, I'm hoping to make the most of this year. I'm a resident advisor for the Upper East Side Law, so I'm a philosophy major. There's some stuff going on. And yeah. Here to help.
Hey
Here to
everyone.
serve.
Hey everyone. I'm the treasurer of the club, and then I hope to improve disabled and non-disabled alliance like recognition on campus by creating videos on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook.
And Carrie, our communications director, is someone ironically, I suppose, having internet troubles. So she may be joining us at a later time, which one she may, I might give her the opportunity to introduce herself, or maybe she'll take it. In the meanwhile, we have here our founder, Rian Denzans.
Yeah.
I never actually learned that, but how to pronounce it.
Yeah, I'm Rian Denzans. I started the club last year in the hopes of connecting disabled students together and educating their allies, because I noticed a very distinct lack of social support for students with disabilities on campus. There was plenty of academic in terms of SSWD, but beyond that, there wasn't anything to fulfill that social aspect of the role, much like how the Pride Center fulfills the social aspect of being a part of the LGBTQ community. So I'm very happy to be sitting here with everyone today, and I'm very happy to everyone that came.
Yeah, to expand on that point just slightly, what we have as disabled students is an extremely diverse group of people, because there's no one way to be disabled. There's no singular condition that makes it happen. So what we find with that is that for that reason, we're sort of, we don't have a lot of stuff in common, except for like that common experience of being disabled. Ergo, Dana became the sort of only purposefully centralized disabled networking place at Sacramento State. It's the one, as far as we know. So yeah, we're hoping to do some good with this platform. Okay, as we go on, we thought it'd be fun to sort of have people here introduce themselves with a little, some icebreaking topics, questions. Us officers are kind of gone, so would it be all right? Anybody would like to share anything about themselves? If not, I get it, but.
Let's leave some time for people to write in the chat.
Okay.
I can go ahead and start. My name is Shelby Tolley. I'm a third year junior here, and my major is journalism. I chose that major because back when I was a kid, I was nonverbal because of my diagnosis of autism. And so I wasn't taught sign language, so writing was my communication. And I saw I saw some gaming magazines, and I thought, wow, so I can do that. And I've just been writing ever since, nonstop.
That's awesome. I can also share just in this bit, well, if anybody else would like to share, do interrupt me. But I had exactly the opposite experience growing up visually disabled. I couldn't really read or write very well, so I wound up speaking as a default for everything, including stuff that probably shouldn't have been spoken out loud. So there you go. All right. If nobody else,
I can go.
Do it. Yes.
Hi, everyone. My name's Serena. This is my third year here at Sac State. I'm a transfer student, and it's also my last year. I'm a forensic chemistry major, and why I chose that major was, it's gonna sound kind of nerdy, but I went to a camp when I was like in the 7th grade, and we studied forensics that week at the camp, and I just really liked it.
That's cool.
Yeah.
It's puzzle solving, right?
I guess I'll share some of my stuff, I guess. So I'm Brian. I'm a 4th year environmental studies major. And I guess the reason why I chose it wasn't because of the environment per se. It's that I want to be an urban planner, and I want to build better public transportation systems in terms of its like accessibility and it to be more efficient.
Certainly, we badly need that here in Sacramento and where I come from in San Diego, where it's all hills, and if you don't have a car, you're done. You're not going anywhere fast.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I want to live in a city where where you don't need a car to travel. You just ride public transit. It's fast. It's efficient.
So we have one new person dropping in, who is probably aware the meeting is being recorded. So do bear that in mind. But it's not a judgmental space. So if you didn't want to share anything about yourself through these like icebreaker conceits, please feel free to do that. I see a connection that's happening today. Give it a second. Okay. I can share one other thing about myself in the interim. I'm a philosophy major, concentration in ethics, politics, and law. And that is chiefly because I want to be a politician. And what I recall most distinctly is that when I was 16 in, I think, sophomore year of high school, I took a sociology course and learned some of the features of societal problems like systemic racism and so forth, poverty and that sort of, and like the sort of self-fulfilling prophecy of poverty and that sort of thing, and thought, I bet I can fix that. I bet I can do something about this. And I kind of feel like I have to, being the beneficiary of the disparity here, part of the privileged class, except for this visual disability I've got going in every way. So that's sort of the aim I took forward and studied philosophy, because I noticed that all the politicians I was watching were really bad at philosophy, really bad at distinguishing between good ideas and bad ones. So I want to learn how to do that as best I can in order to do politics in the best way possible.
Anyone else want to participate in the icebreaker?
Nothing bars you from doing discussion later, of course. We'll proceed into that in just a moment here, but this is just for fun. Okay. Then for the moment, we'll go ahead and proceed. So the club is not entirely new, obviously. We still have a lot of the same people as we did last year, and that's great. It is, however, under new management, if you will. Rian passed the torch to me not too long ago. And for those of you who don't know us very well, we are wildly different people in terms of personality and even things like cadence, which is to say that to do the club exactly as Rian did in the past is sort of beyond me. It was very much focused on the sort of educational and community building aspects of Dana. And without wanting to lose any of the good aspects of it, my emphasis going forward is going to be more on advocacy, trying to get policy change, trying to make disability more ingrained within the public consciousness as best we can, as best we're able. So that is like the general thesis I'm taking into this. We're going to be trying to do a little bit more in the realm of campus-wide, campus-level policy change, and advocating to the powers that be about the decisions that they make, which usually don't involve disabilities. That's the utility that we have. The biggest problem, I think, of last semester even, was that we didn't have a whole lot of participation. It wasn't that people weren't like interested in, like, I don't think it was that people were uninterested in what we were doing. It's just that we didn't get people involved. We're trying to get better at that now. We have a stronger sort of marketing force going at this time. But this is again another area, just like in advocacy, we need lots of people doing the work. We want as many people as possible like spreading the word about Dana. Again, it's at the moment as things stand at Sacramento State, Dana is the place. It is the network for disabled students specifically, which is to say that while it sort of monopolizes that field, which is an opportunity for us to get people in, but it means we're sort of starting from scratch. We don't, automatically have a community here to build off of. So we're hoping that you'll stick around, that you help us out with that kind of thing, because it's a worthwhile endeavor to try and get disability more in this public consciousness in the minds of policymakers. Yeah. So there's that. There's like the general idea here. And this is the thing I just said. I didn't realize. I made these slides. I should have realized, but this is the thing I just said, that we cannot do this by ourselves. And the members are the club, and we want you, this is your, if you choose to accept it, this is your mission too. And we're happy to have you and whatever you can sort of do for that cause. So yeah, thanks in advance for that. I realize that our guest speaker of sorts, Shelby Tolley, was here theoretically to make a sort of announcement for us, and this sounds like to me like a good interval for her to do that. If you would like to, Shelby.
Thank you. Yeah. So currently, I am part of the State Hornet as a staff writer. We just did a new section called Diversity and Inclusion. So what that section does is we're gonna do more diverse stories, more stories about disability, because on the State Hornet, there hasn't been an article about disability besides the article I made about myself, my testimonial. There hasn't been one in 10 years. And that's true. Like, to me, I find that sad. And I feel like the disability community needs more of a spotlight. And in my testimonial, I talked about how I found my voice from being nonverbal. And I feel like the disability community should have their voice and shouldn't be silenced of it. So going into that, I'm doing a story, an article about SSWD and if they're accommodating disabled students as they return to campus for the fall. I would like to know how you guys at Sac State did during online instruction, and as well as if you feel supported in this transition. And so that's the basic background of it. And unfortunately, I kind of hit a wall with the faculty. That it was, I don't know if you guys have had issues with this, but I've been having issues with the faculty at SSWD. Like when I tried getting one of my accommodations, this lady assigned to me said I wasn't severe enough, and I really didn't like that at all. And then when I tried to get an interview with the director, she assumed that I'm abled and assumed that I was being ableist, which it kind of was a weird exchange. So I kind of like backed away from that. So I'm not getting really any good sources. So I thought, you know, let's go to the students. And I was trying to find a community of disabled students, and that was kind of hard to find. And then I found you guys, and you guys have been incredibly sweet. So if any one of you is willing to be interviewed, whether that be over Discord, messaging, phone call, or Zoom call, that would be great. I will accommodate anything that you guys need. And if you're willing, I'm forever grateful for that. And it's really cool that you guys had created this club. I think this is something I could also be a part of. I feel, because I didn't even know you guys are here. So I thought that was pretty cool.
I do want to add, coincidentally, the director of SSWD is our faculty advisor for the club.
Yeah.
So I'm so sorry you had that experience. But I do have her email, and I can help mediate between you guys if you want to take a crack at that again. Because it's not very easy communicating between only email, and misunderstandings, especially in today's current political climate, in terms of all the different things going on, especially things affecting minority communities. It's quick and easy to make assumptions, so I can help mediate between you guys if you want. I'm so sorry that happened.
It's fine. I kind of like handed that part to my editor. So my editor will be, you know, interviewing her if she's still willing, because the exchange made me just feel very uncomfortable, and I couldn't, I felt too uncomfortable to exchange with her more, and it just really affected me of what she said, because it did hurt. And I don't know, like, yeah, I kind of stepped away because that was just too much on me.
Yeah, that's understandable. I'm glad that your professor is able to take care of it.
Yeah.
Editor, that's the word. I forgot the word for a second.
You're all good.
I want to there's a slide specifically for like open discussion, and I right there I want to come back to this story. But in the meanwhile, Shelby, would you be okay dropping an email or something in the chat, just for those who don't already have it? Maybe you can put it in the YouTube video description as well.
Yeah, I'll also drop my phone number if that's better for anyone. If people wouldn't rather email, I totally get that. So if you want to text me or call me, you know, that's also good. Just know, like, if I don't get back to you immediately, it's not your end, it's just my end. Like, I'm either busy, but I promise I will get to you as soon as I can. So I'll definitely drop that in the chat right now.
All right, thank you. Before we do proceed, are there any other announcements people want to make? Thoughts on this somewhat revised idea, this new emphasis that Dana is sort of aiming towards for this year, this semester? It's not a speak now forever hold your peace situation, but we do want to hear any feedback you may have from us. All right. Okay, for now, I think we'll go on to the next section, which, if memory serves, I made this PowerPoint this afternoon. is this. This is the bit where I give something of a preview of what we're hoping to do a little bit more this semester. There are a number of sort of resources on campus for disabled students, or that can be utilized by disabled students. We'll get to that. That I wanted to sort of briefly go over. This is by no means a comprehensive list, and I'm not going to be terribly descriptive, but this is sort of what I could easily generate as a set of descriptors. I also have here a set of links to the sort of websites represented by these, not the websites, the web pages that Sacramento gives to the several groups here. I'll throw that in the chat in a minute. First, this is a non-comprehensive list of what sorts of things that students can expect to utilize if they have disabilities and they need those disabilities accommodated for in any way. And so first is actually Dana, because we as students who've been here for a little while and dealing with disabilities, trying to navigate the system, we have some pretty decent experience doing that. So this club, the people in it, can and should, I hope, be a resource for anybody needing advice or needing to be connected to better resources or whatever. That's part of the idea that we're going to be information sharing throughout. It's obviously not an official resource, it's not an official channel for anything, but it is nevertheless a set of peers for anybody and everybody with trying to navigate the system, which disabled students have to. The second idea here is obviously the SSWD, Services for Students with Disabilities. We spoke about that a minute ago, and it wasn't the most favorable description for understandable reasons. However, it is the entity on campus that is designated for making academic accommodations for disabled students. Therefore, it is usually worthwhile to reach out to them and try and get what you need. They also have other secondary ancillary functions. I recently broke my ankle and had to navigate campus, and my understanding was that there would be vehicles made available to me. I was able to get by with favors, but they have golf carts and whatnot for shuttling students around campus as well. And if memory serves, those are affiliated with SSWD. I could be mistaken, but in any case, they have other stuff going on at student services for students with disabilities. Next, there's the Office of Equal Opportunity. This is a general sort of civil rights related department of the university. It's also called, the acronym I can only pronounce OEO because of my childhood. It's chiefly sort of an enforcement agency. It investigates and reports on cases of basically civil rights abuses, harassment and discrimination on the basis of any sort of protected class, including disability. Disabilities, actually, it's in Title IX and everything. We have legal standing here, and the Office of Equal Opportunity is there for promoting those, helping us out with that. If you do face any sort of harassment or discrimination that is motivated by disability, there's something of a gray area there. Where was it motivated by disability? Was it caused by disability? What's the meaningful difference there? But the nitty-gritty of it matters less than the fact that there is an advocacy group on campus besides the two we've already mentioned. Then there is the obviously the WELL, Student Health and Counseling Services. That is again sort of general purpose, with the idea that you can basically go in, get any kind of medical care you may need, which they can provide. And I don't have personal experience doing that, so I don't have a very clear idea of the limitations of the health and counseling services that they've got. But everything that is there is included within your tuition, so do utilize that if you may need. They have confidential counseling, things like condoms, I recall was in the presentation that they gave me. Those are all. And then there's the niche one. If you live on campus, you probably have, on campus or anywhere near campus, you have a resident advisor somewhere in probably a whole staff. And I spent all of August training as a resident advisor, so I know a little bit about the role. Our whole job basically is like connecting students who need them to the resources that they need. So while I'm quite new at it, there are many people who are very, very good at that job. So again, if you are living on campus and you are in any kind of need, you are totally within your rights, within your ability to contact your resident advisor. At the UEL, at least, the best place to contact us is like the leasing office during the course, but there are other sort of avenues. Anyway, these are some resources that I could easily sort of throw into a slideshow. And if anyone has any sort of any input on these, any other things that should or ought to have been added to this list, I'd love to hear about it because again, this is just sort of what I could easily generate. Otherwise, I can move on to the next thing, which is sort of still on this topic, so don't worry. Okay. So here's the question in my mind. What's wrong with that list? Like, what's the issue that sort of, if there is one that just sort of jumps out at you looking at this list of organizations and services at Sacramento State? I'll give it a minute, type it out in the chat or say your piece.
It's too short.
It is rather short. I don't know that I'm fairly sure it's like not exhaustive. There are other resources, but you're right that like the main ones, the big deals, this is a very short list.
Yeah, but the other ones, they're not on the list that because you couldn't think of them, which means that they're not super accessible and well known.
A fair critique, yeah. Do we anybody would care to expand on that point or make a novel one? There's at least one problem. Besides that one, it's a fair one. It wasn't the one I had in mind. So the one that jumps out at me, and again, this is one to be expanded upon, is that with the exception of SSWD and arguably INA, this whole list, all these organizations, primarily function when something bad has already happened, when the system has already failed, right? When you get harassed, you go to the OEO. When you need some kind of help, you go to the health and counseling services. In general, you are not really within the system very much until something has gone wrong, right? There doesn't seem to be, as far as I can tell, anything with, again, the exception of SSWD, which is mostly academic accommodations, not so much with regard to housing or anything like that, that would make your life easier at the outset if you are a disabled student coming into Sacramento State. That jumped out at me, and it's probably not the only thing that ought to have jumped out at me. So again, this is a discussion question, but that strikes me as a big deal. There isn't very much like proactive support on this campus that I could think of, that anybody that directly knows. Again, if anybody would like to chime in, then please do it. Yeah. One of the sort of thing I'm going to do while we're on the slide is I went to their sort of web pages and got some links to distribute to you. I'm going to throw those in the chat just in case anybody would like to utilize those. Yeah, that's my recommendation is to grab these and put them in a Word document or something, just so that you have them. Again, they're not like super hard to find or anything, but these are sort of ways you can read more about these organizations, these departments, and the ways that they can help you, albeit retroactively for the most part. Okay. So for now, I'm going to head to this bit. This is the tentative schedule for meetings for Dana for the next till the end of the year. So this is what I put together. It was reasonably fast to put together, and I don't fancy that this is going to be like the definitive, unless and until I get like no feedback to the effect that it shouldn't be the definitive list. So if this doesn't work for you guys, any of you or all of you, I want you to let me know if you can think of a better time for meetings to happen. This was one that fit like with my schedule and with the officers here, but that was sort of the only criteria we were working with. So we want your feedback. We want more people here, and we want to know how to make that happen. This is part of that. Anybody? Then for now, at least for now, we'll go ahead and keep this. It's reasonably consistent. I have some advice here again, that you can take a picture or a screenshot of something of the schedule and keep it somewhere. Alternatively, it's on the Discord, and I'm sure it's easier to find it under the monthly schedule tab. Okay. In that case, here's this. This is just about the back end of the presentation. We are wanting to have as open a discussion as possible about the future of this club and what we're trying to accomplish. So some questions for discussion. How does the proposed schedule fit you? What sorts of events should Dana host this year? We were bouncing around some ideas in the officer meeting, but I hope we'll go and restate those. What are some ideas for how we can best advocate on campus? That is to say, who can we go to? What should we say to that person? And so on and so forth, that sort of thing. Any ideas to that effect are welcome. I have a couple of notions, but not a lot that's totally concrete because I'm transferred here at the beginning of last year, and it was all online, so I wasn't even on campus. And then there's yes.
Is Sac State doing online classes this year? I don't know because I don't technically go there anymore, but I just was curious.
Yes, the campus has adopted something of a hybrid approach to most of its classes. Professors are doing it differently between one another, right? I have like one class that's totally asynchronous with like an optional lecture component. I have one class that's totally synchronous, but all online, and one class that is like traditional setup in the classroom synchronous. So seemingly every professor is doing it differently. I just realized I have like all 4 variants represented anyway, in my own schedule, which is fun. I'm perfectly fine keeping track of all that information. Okay. But yeah, basically, yeah, it's largely online. But I think the statistic is that that I was told at one point by President Nelson that about 60% of students have at least one class on campus, or at least one class with like an on-campus component. That's from memory, so I'm not sure that's still correct or if I'm remembering correctly as it was. But there's that. We're mostly online still. So as far as go like events, we want to do events because we only have a relatively small number of meetings we're going to be hosting, and they're going to be a little bit like this, where probably I do a lot of talking and that's it. So events are going to be the bit where we do the advocacy and the bit where we do the work for a better campus. Therefore, as we were ideating in the officer meeting earlier, one thought was that we could have a fundraiser for disability-related charities, which sounds awesome. Simply because that's, as we mentioned before, it's sort of an underrepresented protected class as far as go support systems for disability. So that was one idea. But now I want to, don't let me monopolize everything. I'll throw it to you guys. What do you think?
Have you guys thought of any like socializing events? Like obviously keep in mind the COVID-19 guidelines, but for disabled students to kind of interact with each other, get to know each other and socialize and kind of just have some fun, whether that be over Zoom or, we play games together or something like that.
We actually have a social Zoom party coming up on September 9th at 5:30 p.m.
Okay.
I see Brian linked to the Instagram post. Thank you, Brian. Yeah, so we actually have that event all lined up and ready to go. And we definitely plan on doing some more events throughout the semester, because as much as advocacy is important, it doesn't do a whole lot of good if the people involved aren't, buddies and know each other. So
yeah, there you go. That's that building community elements. I'm not going to say like quotas met, but we have something coming up, which I had forgotten about. So thank you.
No problem. Thank you so much.
Any other sort of recommendations or ideas to bounce around? I can also go off on my diatribe about just like riffing off of this the story about SSWD from earlier. But I don't feel like that'd be entertaining enough to justify.
I was thinking, I have a hard time making phone calls, especially to representatives and such, because it's quite daunting. But I found it easier if I'm with other people who are also calling the representatives. So maybe if something comes up and there's a particular bill that we want to endorse that, say, the SSI Restoration Act of 2021, hint, hint, if we want to have a kind of call your representatives party where we all come together over Zoom and just hang out while we call representatives and support each other in the process. That's something we could do probably.
That's a neat idea. I wonder if we could have like each of us has a Google Voice open and we like speak into both the Zoom party and into the phone at the same time. We can like hear each other talk. I don't know if that's more nerve-wracking or somehow less, but it sounds interesting. I've actually personally never called a representative before, with the rationale being that I don't know if it does any good, but this is sort of the thing we're trying to correct for in society and in myself as well, evidently, that we just don't talk enough about disability. So there's that.
I was kind of thinking to build some more, members into the club. And I can bring it up with the editors at the State Hornet, but maybe the State Hornet can do a article on you guys, like a FAQ about the club. That way, that gets tossed around the social media and, people see it more and maybe bring in some new members. But since you guys are sort of new, I thought, that would be interesting to bring up as a FAQ on you guys and the stuff you're doing and planning to do.
That sounds spectacular as a marketing, as a well, I have cynical vocabulary, but a marketing ploy.
Yeah, I mean, I probably can't be personally involved in that. It depends on my editors and what they think. So what I'll do is our staff meeting is on Tuesday from 3 to 4. So I'll bring it up to my editor and see what she thinks.
Awesome.
That sounds fabulous.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Let's
problem.
absolutely try to do that thing. Yeah. I just want to say for the recording, for everybody maybe in the Discord who's not here just now, that we will remain like open to ideas. Events are going to be the tool for the good work that we're hoping to do. So anything you might want to connect us with or suggest that we try and do, let's give it a shot. I mean, frankly, what have we got to lose apart from like my sanity? The one of the interesting things is we have access to, yeah. Sorry, that's a message in the chat. I'm looking at it. Is that SACNAS? SACNAS? I can't tell if that's an acronym or if
SACNAS, it's Society for the something about like Chicanos and Native Americans in science.
Yeah, do it. In fact, that's interesting. That's a good point about like marketing. It's the best kind is word of mouth. So any sort of pitch you could make to your classmates, your other any other student organizations you have to be part of, that would be more than welcome. This is again one of those things where like people don't know we exist, but we're kind of the only community space for disabled students. So I can easily imagine they'd want to be part of it if they knew about it. So yeah, spread the word, I suppose. Proselytize to your heart's content. Yeah, that wasn't politically sound of me to say. Anyway, I wonder. I also had the event idea that we could do some kind of like research beforehand and then action on the field, trying to like connect or students to resources that may already be available to them outside of campus, specifically for like disabled medical bills and so on and that sort of thing. Because those kinds of grants exist, but they're not necessarily well advertised, not dissimilarly to Dana itself. So something along the lines of like a workshop that we could put on might be hopefully doable, but definitely helpful to somebody, right? Yeah. Again, we remain open to suggestions. Keep them coming. But in the meanwhile, we are at about 7:50. So we have a few minutes, but the sort of slot I had in mind was about an hour, and I don't want to take up more of people's time than they're prepared to give at the outset. Hour is like a reasonable assumption to have made. Therefore, we'll hope to get out here swiftly enough, but this is like the last slide. So I want to make this like, oh, man. Cal, Able, SSI, Medical, Medi-Cal, Medicaid, yeah. Yeah, those are all at least potentially quite helpful resources. Learning more about those on with the club and disseminating that information would be potentially a very helpful function that we could serve. Personally, I don't know a whole lot about it, but like, I'm actually in the Department of Rehabilitation, not like as an employee or anything, but I have a case with them. And so I have some idea of like the limitations of the scope of stuff that they cover, but they do cover a good deal. So it's potentially a very helpful thing to connect with to. Are there Sac State grants for disabled students? That is the question. I'm actually not entirely sure. There probably are scholarships and that sort of thing, but specifically coming from the school, I don't know in advance. The other thing I'm distinctly aware of is the grant that was made as a result of the pandemic that is going towards funding new technology for students. So it's like, for me, it was like $250 out of the whole pie that I used to go towards a new computer set. But that's available from the bookstore. It's reasonably easy to get a hold of. Yeah. Yeah. So there's that, but that's not, that's again, potentially very helpful, but not direct. It's not directly disability, is it? So grants like specifically for that are the sort of thing we definitely want to understand more about. At least I want to understand more about it. How much you guys want to know. Yeah, any that are Sac State specific for sure. Well, we want to get a hold of those. It's a less competitive market, theoretically speaking. Okay. With our, yeah. Any other suggestions? Do keep it coming. In fact, interrupt me like verbally if you want to. I'm going to as briefly as I can go down this rabbit hole because I think it's like sort of pertinent to like what Dana is and what it's meant to be. About the interaction that Shelby told us about with the SSWD. So what seems to have happened there is that a disabled person, either Dr. Vance or I think it was Dr. Vance, right? Yeah. Did not fully grasp the disability of another disabled person. So what we have there is not dissimilar to like, okay, it's an extreme example, but bear with me. During the antebellum period in the United States, there were several Black slave owners, like who had made it out of the system and then, you know, profited from it later on. A case of like, you know, people in the marginalized group promoting the marginalization of the group. And that's obviously much worse. Like, I don't know if there's any reasonable metric, but the point sort of stands that we have a case here of genuine ignorance, like going to maybe even like well-meaning people going towards this breakdown of communication, basically, that actually transpired. This barring of a student from services. And that is part of the problem that we're hoping to correct. Like the thing about disability being sort of a nebulous and underrepresented social class, a protected class, but not often understood, is that disabled people themselves don't easily or readily understand it. I'm actually a pretty good example of that myself. I came to this club knowing very little about like the disabled community. I relied on Rianne for all of that information. Who's much more well connected than I am, but it's just not where I've like spent my time. I have you know different specialties and interests.
There is a word for that. I just want to say real quick. Yeah. It's called lateral ableism. So it's essentially a word to describe when a disabled person is ableist to another disabled person. I'm not sure how popular the term is because within the disabled community, there's a huge debate about language and different terms that we use to describe our experiences, both individually and as a community. But last I heard, lateral ableism was the term that fit that sort of experience.
I think that tracks, right? Like you can imagine like in an organization, you make a lateral move if you switch positions but don't actually get a pay raise. You can picture like lateral ableism as two people at the same level in the hierarchy doing that. But yeah, that is, I'm glad to hear that there's a term for it. On the other hand, if there's a term for it, it's a big deal. It's a thing that happens a lot. ergo Dana. You know, that's what we're trying to accomplish here in part. Because this kind of thing happens, right? Just because we don't often talk about it, because we don't actually have a lot in common. It's a bit like it reminds me as well of, like, if you're online, you'll find different sort of groups that affiliate themselves with what they call the atheist community. But the thing about, like, atheists is that they literally have nothing in common, like, at least a priori. There is no belief system that, like, unifies them. There's not even a common experience as with disabled community. There is just, like, the one sort of facet that is historically underrepresented and marginalized that they happen to have in common. But it constitutes, like, no belief, no thing. So to try and, like, form a community around that is difficult. And similarly with disability, we're trying to form a community around a very nebulous, like, set of things that even people with disabilities may not understand. And that's the fight. I say it's a fight. It's probably better to be, like, gentle about it, but, you know, that's the fight.
Yeah.
So there you are. If you have any other, I think that's my bit. I don't think it was terribly well said, but that's it. If there are any other comments, discussion points we want to go over before I go ahead and stop the recording, put them out there. And if not, we'll be around, still on Discord server and everything. And for event ideas, marketing pitches, so on and so forth.
It's never too late to contribute any ideas. They never have to be only in meetings. So if something comes to you at, like, 3 a.m. in the morning, just chuck it in the Discord server or leave a comment on one of our most recent social media posts.
One word, bake sale. Yeah, that works. That was actually one of the ideas we were bouncing around at the officer meeting. I didn't think of that. Yeah. We'll go over it later, but I have the loose notion that I can sort of, as part of my affiliation with some other student organizations, the ASI, and I forget the acronym, but it's the governing body of students that regards housing on campus. They do events and like appreciation type things, but they're involved in student housing. I'm a liaison to at least one of those groups from the Upper East Side Lofts resident advisors. So I can use that. Anyway, for now, that's it. We'll have more meetings, and we want any input you can offer, however you can offer it. But for the purpose of this meeting is done, just about. Thank you for coming, and mark your calendars or whatever you prefer to do, and spread the word, because our next meeting is September 17th at 7 p.m. And I didn't mention it in the slides, but it was mentioned earlier. September 9th, we were doing that Zoom party. That's advertised elsewhere. Sorry, I was distracted by the cat. It's a very good cat.
Very cute cat.
I really hope that shows up in the YouTube video and everything. It's just Siamese cats, man. I don't know. I like. Okay. I guess that's it. Again, thank you for coming. Follow that Instagram link from earlier in the chat. We'll have it somewhere. Until next time.
Thanks everyone for coming.